Megahertz. You're listening to Megahertz on 4ZZZ.
You're tuned in to Megahertz on 4ZZZ, and you're in the studio with myself, Sisi. My pronouns are she, her, and
Denise, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Sarah, and my pronouns are they, them.
We have a full house today, and in store we may or may not have an interview, so we're not going to go into that, but you might be pleasantly surprised.
Yes.
Before we get on with the show, I would like to acknowledge that we are broadcasting from the stolen lands of the Yagara and Turrbal peoples as the sovereign owners of the unceded land on which we live. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and the Jagara, Turrbal, Yagara, Yagarapul and Quandamooka nations, and we stand in solidarity with all First Nations people in the fight for justice. We're about to go into our men's violence register and femicide report segment. Before we do this, we would like to issue a content warning. This is very heavy stuff, and if it's going to be triggering for you, practice self-care, look after yourself, and tune out for the next 5 or so minutes. I'm going to pass over to Sarah.
Thanks, Sisi. Yeah, it might actually, you might need to tune out for 10 minutes today because unfortunately it's been a really bad week. And look, any week where a woman is killed is a bad week. But there have actually been three women that have been unlawfully killed in the past week here in Australia. We lost Samia Malik, who was a 20-year-old woman, 20-year-old student, and who was, it looks like a hit and run in Hillcrest, South Australia, and a man has been charged over her death. But it's alleged that he drove into her with his vehicle and then fled the scene and didn't offer any aid, any assistance, and didn't call 000. And I wanted to try and get some more information on that one, but there was not a lot out there. I was really disturbed to see that everything that I could find doing an internet search for this, every news article I found was behind a paywall, and they all seem to be the same news article, just repeated behind different paywalls. So not very well reported, and I couldn't tell you if this was a deliberate act, somebody who was known to her, or if this was a terrible accident. But certainly it is not rendering aid and not offering assistance and fleeing the scene does make it a crime, regardless of if that was intentional. And it's just awful that she was a person studying. She was in Adelaide, and she's come to Australia specifically to study and to follow her dreams, and her life has been tragically cut short. That was the 13th of May. Then on the 15th of May, another a woman. Her name has not been released. I imagine probably contacting next of kin and things like that. So, again, not a whole lot of information. Hamilton, Victoria. She was found after the police did a welfare check. Police were called to do a welfare check, and they found her with multiple injuries. Had a report here that there was another man who was found injured and was under police guard in hospital. According to the 7 News, there was a man who was found after a search of the area, and the man has now been charged, and that was a man that was known to her, but I don't have any more information than that. And then Friday the 16th, a 23-year-old woman was murdered in Springfield Lakes in Queensland, in Ipswich. And her husband and his brother have been charged with her death, and they are due to they were due to front Ipswich Magistrates Court today. And still, the report I have from that, there's still the place is a crime scene. They're still putting together what has occurred there. ABC News also reports that the police are working with Afghanistan consulate to find her next of kin. And the news also paid a special tribute to the paramedics that were first on the scene that did try to revive her with CPR. And I'm just devastated. There's just so many women just tragically with their lives just cut short, and young women as well. The unnamed woman from Springfield was 23 and had 2 children under 5 years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huge impact on our community and on families, and yes, and we remember them.
I feel like this week also is pretty reflective of the gross underrepresentation of these women in our media. The fact that we can't find any information, and of course there's legal elements to this, but also like a 23-year-old woman murdered in Springfield Lakes, Queensland, and we don't know about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't, and that is so close to us. And this issue is so underrepresented in mainstream media, and
that's a big factor in the reason why we've committed here to talk about it every week, despite despite the uncomfortable nature of it. We feel that it's really important to have these discussions, and but I think that is shocking in itself, the fact that it isn't talked about and that it is so hard to find information. And I will also give credit and a shout out to we find at least all our initial information from Sherele Moody Femicide Watch, and who does an amazing job of making sure that these stories do come to light. And without that, the work that she does, they would just go unnoticed, and you can see that it really does seem to be that certain kinds of women are far more likely to be mentioned in the news and are far more likely to be talked about, and there is far more outrage for some women than there is for others, and
yes, that's what really struck me was when I was putting it together, that they were all from overseas, and there was very little information on them, and and I'm sure that they won't be mentioned. So I think that's the tragic thing of the intersectionality of feminist issues, that if they had been white, and there would have been more news, but because they're overseas or migrants or whatever, they don't get mentioned. It's very tragic.
Are you renting your home and affected by domestic abuse? When you are affected by domestic abuse, you have rights to leave or to stay in the rental property. You are not responsible for damage caused by violence that you have experienced. Call 1300 744 263 for confidential renting advice. Tenants Queensland, 1300 744 263. Proud sponsor of 4ZZZ.
You're listening to Megahertz on 4ZZZ 102.1 FM.
Yes, and we did talk earlier about a surprise interview. I'm very excited to have Michelle Royce from DVConnect with us today. Michelle came last year on our 16 Days of Activism in regards to this, but this month is the Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Month for Queensland, and we thought it was appropriate to get Michelle in again because very informative and lovely to have you here again, Michelle. So if you just wanted to again tell us about the DVConnect services for our listeners and your role there.
Yeah. Thank you again for having us back. We really loved having a chat last time, and when we got the information, it was a hard yes for us to come again. DV Prevention Month is a huge month for us, and it's a really important space where we as a community talk about what we can do to help end violence that happens in the home and intimate partner relationships and in family relationships. Lots of people probably have heard of the term DVConnect or seen it around. And so we sort of offer four main services as DVConnect, as that branding. The main one is Women's Line. So that's the 24/7 crisis response for someone experiencing domestic and family violence that's female or identifies as female. And particularly if you're looking for safety tonight, you're looking for a safe pathway away from the violence in this moment, or you want to call us and get some information and advice about where you might be able to access some counselling or other support. So that's our Women's Line. That's 1800 811 811, and what we're most known for. Our second service that really centres on domestic and family violence is our Men's Line. So that's an almost 24/7. It's 7 days a week. It closes at midnight service for men or people who identify as male who are either using or experiencing violence. It's a really important helpline for people who are experiencing violence who also might need a safe pathway, a bit like what we offer on Women's Line. But a lot of our work is actually working with men that use violence and helping them make changes so they are safer people, so they stop using violence. So that's a much smaller service, but we see it as being absolutely critical as well. Outside of that, when we talk about the violence against women space or domestic, family and sexual violence, we've got two services that respond to sexual violence. The sexual assault helpline, so that's again almost 24/7, 7 days a week, even on public holidays, line that people can call to get information and advice about a recent or historical sexual abuse, and that can help you through steps that you might need to know if you want to present to police or hospital, or just about finding and seeking counselling. And then finally, we have the forensic support line, which is a subset of our sexual assault helpline. I'm sure we all saw in the media a couple of years ago, there was a huge inquiry into how forensic DNA was managed by Queensland, and it has a significant impact on people's criminal justice journey. And so people who had experienced sexual violence and did start a criminal justice journey and had some DNA taken as part of that over a significant period of time, their criminal justice matters may be looked at again because we are reviewing the DNA that was taken from those samples. So that's a support line just to give people information around what might happen and when they might get more details around that criminal justice journey, when it might happen for them, as well as some counselling, because obviously it's very traumatic if you've gone through a process with police and courts and then you find out that that whole process had an underlying issue with the way a component of it, the management of DNA, was done.
Well, thank you, Michelle. That's very informative and must be, it's full on by the sound of it. It's full on what you're doing and what a fabulous service.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And it goes across Queensland, on my understanding. It's everywhere in Queensland, is that
we
right?
are statewide. Anyone in Queensland can call and access our supports and services, and that's even with the practical support of getting to safety. You could be in the most remote part of Queensland and we'll work with you to get you to safety.
Right. And I see that it's emergency transport accommodation for the entire family, including pets. So it means that often they're the decisions that might make you stay in a difficult situation, but the fact that you offer all of that certainly makes it more palatable, I guess, to leave, although it's very complex usually, those
so
situations.
Yeah, but we work with RSPCA to try to find homes for all sorts of pets: ducks, pigs, cows, dogs, cats, birds.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, sometimes there's challenges with that, but we work really closely with RSPCA so your pets can be safe while you're finding your pathway to safety, and then we reunite you as soon as we practically can.
That was going to be my question. There is that when you say rehome them, are they temporarily looked after or are they permanently rehomed? But temporarily looked after. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's temporary. Yeah. While you're just trying to figure out your next safe place.
Michelle, can you tell us about your role at DVConnect?
Yeah, so I have a really exciting role called Director of Social Impact, and it means that I get to look at how we're working with the community and we're working with systems for both things to be more responsive to the needs of people who experience domestic, family and sexual violence. So things like radio interviews where you engage with the community and you talk about that, or systems advocacy, so parliamentary inquiries where we give our perspective on how a certain legislated change, like a law change, might impact a person who experiences violence. Or even they've done a recent review in the mental health scope and responses within Queensland. I was part of writing a submission to think about the lens of people who either experience domestic violence, also interacting with the mental health system, or people using violence who also interact with the mental health system. So really thinking about how we can have a far more global response to domestic, family and sexual violence that stops it. But if it doesn't stop it, it at least has a system that responds better to it.
Wow. Have you got like an example of a law that you've put forward and discussed that would lead to change when you say that in court?
Yeah, so I'm going to pick on a pretty big one that's about to come into effect, and that's the coercive control legislation. So obviously that had a lot of momentum behind it. And the devil is always in the detail. So the way it's actually enacted in the courtroom, the way police collect evidence, the way the victim survivor understands that. So some of the stuff that we bring to the table, that we bring to the conversation, is an understanding of what it's like to be a victim survivor, trying to gather evidence over years of the abuse that you've suffered that might not be really obvious to, say, a policeman, of understanding how that's abuse, and trying to look for ways that we can work with policing and train them, the way that the legislation's written so that evidence can be entered into a courtroom so that a judge then can consider that information. Like all these little things are things that make a system fall apart. If you can't enter evidence into a courtroom, then a judge can't consider it in part of their decision making. So that could be really important to you and a really critical part of your story, but it becomes like not part of the conversation. So there's some of the things.
This is something that I hear often from victim survivors is disappointment or anger even at the fact that they know these things have happened. There have been reports and things of the abuse that's happened over years, but for various reasons it doesn't get considered, or it doesn't get to go, it doesn't become part of that court case. So can you tell us more about that, how we can help people with that?
I think the first important part, and this is really challenging because it's risky and it's additional work, it's additional admin, is writing things down, documenting them, because unfortunately if it's written down it tends to be a bit of a stronger story in our court systems. But that's about putting more stuff on the victim survivor, which isn't fair. It should be about what the system can do to make that better. So I know they're looking at some resources and tools like apps that can help you store, and then the app helps translate that into something that could be entered into evidence. It's about training with police. It's about working with magistrates to understand when they're seeing evidence, sort of unpacking a little bit what's below it, or getting the insight of that person's experience. Because it is challenging. It is challenging. Legislation's a really blunt instrument, and it's actually quite grey. We think it's black and white, but it's very grey, and it's so dependent on so many parties. So I think when we as a system are looking at coercive control coming, we're excited that it's been named. We're excited that the community says this is a crime. We are worried about all those things. But at the same time, services like mine are working with the police in their training. We're working with courts in what they're going to do when it starts to hit magistrates and then higher level courts as it gets handed up, so that we can see what's working and see what's not working to make those changes. We are trying to be prepared. The police have done lots of work on the training. We as a sector are trying to work with people that reach out to us about understanding the legal system. But it is a really convoluted and complicated process that needs lots and lots of work, and it really is a source of frustration for victim survivors in trying to find justice.
So that comes into effect from July, is that correct?
The 26th of May.
26th of May?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so it is very
right on
soon.
our doorstep.
Very soon.
Wow.
Oh, wow. And I guess it's like most things, it's only until it starts happening that but that sort of leads to a question. What about people that have been experiencing coercive control to date? That is that just sort of not something you can do anything about, or?
That question raises a really good point. Coercive control is still recognised as a DV offence. So what this legislation does is it makes it a standalone criminal offence, and that puts it in the criminal court. In the first instance, DV is a civil matter. It still goes to court, it still has a hearing, but it's looked at slightly different with some of the systems. So right now today, you could use evidence of coercive control and get a domestic and family violence order to keep you safe, and it would still be recognised as a type of DV, and some of those actions could end up in a criminal court. This makes it standalone criminal,
right,
and it has bigger repercussions that come with it.
Paradigm Shift's podcast is available online and via your favourite podcasting app, challenging the assumptions of our current society to investigate alternative ways of living for a world based on justice, solidarity, and sustainability. Tune in to the Paradigm Shift podcast. Just search The Paradigm Shift for ZZZ.
We're in the studio with Michelle Royce from DVConnect because this month is actually the month of Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Awareness Month. The theme was Take Positive Action Today to Build a Safer Queensland. So, Michelle, let us know what events have you done throughout this month to raise awareness?
It is a very busy month for any DV service, as well as the police force who stand alongside us across May, and a really good opportunity for lots of localised place-based activities. Two of the biggest things on our calendars was in the first week, on the Wednesday, we have the Candlelight Vigil. That's held every year, and that's held right across the state at different venues where we remember all the people who've lost their lives to domestic and family violence across the previous year. And that sort of kicks off the month to remind us the importance of why we need to prevent domestic and family violence and why we need to stand together to do that. The next big thing that we're working on is a DV forum that's happening this Friday. So we're bringing together lots of people who work in the sector, but also those areas that connect with the work that we do. And we share information around how you respond to domestic and family violence, how you might work with men who use violence, and just get a good understanding of what's available in the community and those sorts of things. Apart from that, there's lots of little events. We're halfway through the month, so I know lots of events have already happened, but there might be some more in your community that's worth looking up. There's a website hosted by the Queensland Government and the DV Prevention Month where you'll be able to see if there's something in your area.
We can link to that on our Facebook as well.
That's right, we will. And I think, Sarah, you had a question that you wanted to... Or did we cover that?
I have so many questions. So you're going to let me loose, or we got time? Actually, look, I've so much fantastic work that you do, and I have so many questions. But I will start with very interested in the forensic hotline that you have, and because that was new to me when I was from last year. So, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Queensland Government, in recognising, not only was criminal justice disrupted when they identified that some DNA samples weren't tested appropriately and therefore unable to be entered into courts. We're talking about courts and evidence and processes. Like, it's a very important process that DNA is tested appropriately so that it can be admitted as evidence. When they identified that they would have to review how they're doing the DNA work as well as the court work, thankfully they also recognised that victim survivors are going to have a significant impact from this news. And so they stood up services like ours to be able to offer a response to help guide people on this journey. And they also funded sexual assault services right across the state who currently get funding to do sexual assault counselling to be able to take on the additional volume so that people would have somewhere to turn to when they found out that their criminal justice matter was disrupted by the DNA not being processed appropriately.
So when you say disrupted, does this say for people who have had a matter that's gone before the court and perhaps it that has been acquitted or that kind of thing, are they able to come to like ask to have their cases retried? Is that what's going on? Or
so People can ring up and try to and find out if their DNA was impacted, but it's based on the fact if they've done a full review of all the DNA matters that were not managed as they should have been, and so the police are working methodically through that list to contact victim survivors. If they retest the DNA and find that evidence may come into play from that retesting, they'll then be contacting victim survivors to say your matter may be reopened. So that's quite a long journey.
The matter could be reopened without the victim survivor even requesting it or being aware of that.
So the first step is the review of the DNA. They first have to see if the DNA was managed appropriately or not.
We should probably go right back to the start here. So we're talking about it was discovered in Queensland that samples weren't actually being tested. Is that my understanding? Samples of a certain size were not being tested due to budgetary reasons, that they decided some things they wouldn't test certain things under certain conditions, and then that was then later declared to be not great. I don't know what the legal term is for that. They went, yeah, that's not good, let's not do that, and let's actually have a relook at those things that may have been impacted. So I'm thinking that there's possibly a whole lot of people that don't even know about this at all, that this is a thing. So where we're at now, the justice system or the police are looking over what samples weren't tested or were tested incorrectly.
Yep.
And then they're making judgments about each case in a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. And I can imagine how impactful that could be to people, particularly people who decisions have been made one way or the other, but they're may have been able to put it behind them, and then they're going to be contacted. Because in a lot of these cases as well, I think what a lot of people don't know, it's not like you see on TV where this person's suing this person necessarily. It's the state that is prosecuting the offender, and so the state can do that with or without the victim survivor having anything to do with that. Usually they need them because they don't have any evidence or witnesses without the cooperation of the victim survivor. But the impact of all of this has just really hit me of what this means, and I'm imagining that there are possibly people who are listening to this that haven't heard about this, haven't considered it. So if you are hearing about this for the first time, and you are somebody who so it was the past 2 years, is that the dates we're talking about?
The date range is actually a lot broader than that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it goes back quite a number of years.
Okay, so it's sometime in the last, say 5-10 years. If you are hearing about this now and you think that you might be impacted by this, what can they do?
I am not an expert on the DNA process, but loosely speaking, if you had forensic DNA taken from you regarding your sexual assault, regarding your sexual violence case, and that there was an issue with the DNA on your criminal justice process, then this may impact you, especially if it's happened in the last 5-10 years. I can't remember the exact.
That's fine.
And it is a slow process because they have to methodically go through each DNA sample, see whether it was treated correctly or not correctly, and then if it was then even if it's retested, they have to then consider if that changes the evidence. So they could test the DNA and then find out it actually still means nothing. So then nothing changes. But then if they go through those stages and they realise that actually this would introduce new evidence to your matter, then that matter could be re-looked at and you would be part of that conversation. You're right in that it's the state bringing this, but the state and the magistrates and the judges and the prosecution's office have been doing a really long journey to be trauma informed and to bring the victim survivor on it. But technically it's a state decision matter.
Okay.
Wow, that's big can of worms, isn't it? But,
and
yes.
Just for those listening, they can call the forensic hotline.
Yes, so we don't know the answers about where your case is specifically, but we can provide you with information and support and link you with a counselling service if you need it. And that's 1300 264 827, and that's open from 9 till 6 Monday to Friday.
Wow.
Anything else you would like to add? Any services that you think need to be talked about on the radio?
Gosh,
Big
all of them. Something we want to be really clear on is that we're like a central helpline, and each area has its own domestic and family violence response and its own sexual assault response as well. So if some of the things we've been talking about today, and you think you might want to access some more supports, there are regional services in your area where you could go in and get face-to-face, because we're virtual, we're by phone primarily. But of course you can ring us and we'll point you in the right direction as well.
Fantastic.
So you're a starting point really to, and you'll connect everyone. DVConnect.
It's in the name, yeah.
And one more time, what is the DVConnect number?
So the women's line number is 1800 811 811. And then the men's line number is 1800 600 636.
G'day, it's Salty here. I'm the volunteer coordinator at 4ZZZ. Without volunteers, there would be no Triple Z. Every program you hear, every merch stall you see, every time you pop into reception, just about everything at 4ZZZ is done by volunteers. Can you believe it? It's National Volunteer Week this week, and we'd really like to take the time to thank you all. Thank you all so much. As we move into our 50th year of broadcasting, it is important to recognise that none of this would have happened without volunteers from all walks of life and all abilities. If you want to learn more about volunteering, have a squiz at our website, 4ZZZ.org.au, and have a look for Participate in the menu. You know, those three little lines in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Kind of looks like a hamburger. 4ZZZ cares about our communities and our volunteers.
We have 5 minutes left of the show, so we're just going to jump right back into it. Sarah.
We are enjoying this so much, and thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on to our show. And so we're just going to keep talking right to the end. So
Sounds great.
So yes, thank you for coming in, and I just really love the fact that you have a men's line, both for men who are victims and victim survivors of domestic violence, and also for men who use violence. And I have to say, since you came on the radio last year with us, you've had an impact, because I've changed my language and I have adopted talking about people who use violence. And that has made a huge difference. I think language is really important.
Language is so important, and a little bit of backstory about using the term perpetrator versus person using violence. Perpetrator was really the language that we used a lot, but that was when we were building awareness about the importance of holding people that use violence accountable and naming them, and not letting them be silent, which is a significant issue, letting them be silent, fall into the background. But now, as we are having more opportunity to work with people, that label isn't helpful in shifting behaviours. That label isn't helpful in drawing people close so that we can have these conversations and help men take responsibility to stop using violence. And so that's the importance of people using violence, plus acknowledging, whilst it is majority men and most harm is caused by men, whether that's against women and or men, sometimes it's not men who are perpetrating the violence.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And yeah, men using violence or people using violence, but it is really very, it's a powerful language thing. And I love the way that you really are, and this is DV Prevention Month, so it is great that you are doing so much work in that prevention space.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to see it all happen in the, we don't want it to happen, we want to see the prevention. So can you tell us how the men's line actually came about?
Yeah, so it started in 2002 in recognition that there was no sort of global response to men who were primarily using violence, and thankfully our funding included the ability to work with men who were experiencing violence so they could find a pathway to safety, because that's an important component. But there was not a lot of response for men using violence, and definitely not on a statewide level, and that absolutely is. Women and children can't be safe unless men are safe in themselves and safe to the people around them. So stronger families are built from men stopping using violence. And unless we bring them in on this conversation, unless we give them tools and resources and hold them accountable, but give them the tools to be accountable, give them a space to be accountable, they're not going to stop using violence, and women are going to keep dying. So it's an important prevention component. Even once men have started using violence, if we can help them stop using violence, then we're preventing future harm. So it's a very important piece of work. It's very challenging. It's very hard. We have highly skilled practitioners and people who work with men across the state in domestic and family violence space are very skilled, but critical.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to end it there because we've run out of time. But thank you so much, Michelle from DVConnect. And if you need support, one more time, what's the number?
Our women's line is 1-800-811-811 and our men's line is 1-800-600-636.
You've been listening to Megahertz. Thanks for listening.
Isn't that what feminism is about?